every one of us is worthy.
And yes, that was India Ree with Worthy. Thank you for being here with us. This is 21 minutes past the hour, 11 a.m. Good morning and welcome to Ethical Spotlight on J101.9 FM here in Jos City. Just as warm and just as also cold at night, a beautiful combination of weather. My name is Judith Johnson. It is lovely to be here again this morning. And yes, this is Ethical Spotlight. It comes your way every Friday from 11:15 to the hour of 12 noon. Don't forget you can follow Ethical Spotlight is brought to you by the International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice, PSG. PSG exists to promote peace and advocate for social justice and speak truth to power. You can follow PSG on its social media handles on Twitter and Facebook at PSG Nigeria. PSG Nigeria, that's for Twitter and Facebook. While on Instagram at PSG_NG, PSG_NG. You can also follow our live stream on Facebook by just following at PSG Nigeria, and then you can join us in the studio as we live stream this program. Also, quickly to invite and also remind you of our maiden national conference 10 a.m. Crisp and Sweet, an event setter by 10 a.m. We barely have about 8 days to the event, so please mark your calendar so you don't forget. It is themed the role of civil society program. We'll also talk about to delve more into the maiden national conference as we take few minutes to talk about our topic for today, which is ethical protest in advancing social causes. Ethical protest in advancing social causes. And I'm not alone in the studio. To the guys behind the scene, Daniel Agidike, and also to Dorcas Gang, thank you for being here this morning. My guest with me this morning is the program manager of the here, sir.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, and quickly we'll just delve into the topic for this morning. Ethical protest. We'll have to manage our time, sir. So we'll quickly delve into ethical protest and advancing social causes, and then we'll talk more on our maiden national conference that will be coming up on the 2nd of December. When people hear protests, I'm sure most people will want to think about the 2020 protests that hit social media, the 2020 protests that broke news, not just in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. Ethical protest involves peaceful expressions, voicing out the ills in the society, seeking for rights, an avenue of destruction. But when we talk about ethical protests, we're talking about peaceful protests, demanding your rights in a just way, abiding to the laws of the land, not destroy.
Activism. Would you call protests just an activism, or it differs from every other forms of activism?
Protest is a form of activism. Now, what you need to understand is, now what they're doing is activism.
Okay.
They are coming out to speak for what is maybe injustice or what is unjust.
Okay.
So, advocates like the 2020 you speak about, we had issues of bad governance. We have issues of police brutalities. These are some of the issues that the youth were demanding. That look, there is a section of the police, which is the SARS, and they called that protest "End SARS." You have to. This is them demanding. That is activism. You are demanding that something needs to change, and we saw that the states or their communities seeking that this has to stop. But along the line, I think it was hijacked. But meanwhile, it brought the government to the table to dialogue to say, look, we have to look. Let me say, it was hard for them to come down to the people. But that brought every governor in his states on his feet, speaking about this issue, demanding even to the federal time people want to speak or ask for their rights. The government should not be against it. Because we have seen instances whereby governments will tell you, nobody should protest, there should be no peaceful march for whatever reason. And if you tell the people not to protest, not to critique some of the policies, now how can we have reforms in the nation? How can we have advancement, progress, when people cannot speak of their rights, people cannot demand their rights?
Brought about tangible positive change in the communities on a larger scale. Do we have ethical protest that would say was a successful one?
Yes, we have civil rights movement, Sudan, right? Of recent, we have seen these things in other nations where people march to occupy their citizens, their countries. We have seen even in motorable roads. You can go to areas like the Angom Miango at Yentrela, close to Fudawa. You see these people living on the mountains. They are citizens. Every day they discharge their duties. But yet, what did they get in turn as citizens? These are the things that you look and one have to advocate, and not just advocating, but also to be part of the movement that will bring that change, to see that the water that these people demand in that community, or the road, or whatever it is, the good school, hospital, it's not enough to keep speaking about these things. We have to bring the government, and it comes with what we call the peaceful ethical protest in this cause.
Okay, now let's come back to the issue of course, they started the purpose for the protest was a positive one, but to an extent, we started seeing people who vandalized properties, especially government-owned properties. Aside that, we also had the issue of people vandalizing buildings.
Coming out to own the struggle, that I am the leader of this struggle. We have seen so many pressure groups, youth movement, even down to the labor. Will I call it the Nigerian Labor Union? We have seen them hold protests, but they have leaders in this. But in the NSAS, there were no leaders. But I can tell you that it is one of the most coordinated that I have seen. It got to a time at Ahmadu Bello Way, some youths were stoning, breaking, destroying, vandalizing properties. You know, people were going about their businesses. The NSAS process took not just 1 day, 2 days, but we have weeks. Are we together? Now, if you look at these things, day 1, day 2, the youth were so coordinated to demand their rights. The violence that started, or the vandalism, once you are speaking for your right, you should expect that there are oppositions. You cannot say this is not going on well in the state. Whatever you see in the state, that is somebody is benefiting from it. Violence to hijack it. And when you ask yourself these questions in other states where these protests, look where youth occupied to speak, to voice out, most of those places, you will not see the violence. So you ask yourself, who are
Now let's come back to the focus.
University of Jos. We had the Vice Chancellor then, and in his mind he said this must take place. But we are saying no, as the leaders, we are ready for it, whatever it will take. Because in ethical protests, you must understand that as a leader, you will be punished for whatever decision you take. So during that protest, we were punished for interrupting academic calendar. I can tell you that alone made the management could not increase the fee. During the protest, I want to tell you something, that we saw some students that were angry because the military at Bauchi Junction opened fire on Nigerian students, the campus, to vandalize some of the lecture halls and other things. We stopped them. We know what it is. And after we came back, the management charged us to pay 12,000 naira per student. Now, count the level of the vandalization that they claimed that happened during students, 12,000 naira to pay.
Okay, now let me stop you at this point. We would like to know, what was the outcome of that protest? Would you say it was a positive outcome or a negative outcome?
It was, yes, it was a positive outcome. Because, one, the fee was not increased. Hostel fee, want to increase hostel charges without good condition. The toilets were bad. Things were really bad. So that stopped that moves from management. And also the 12,000 naira that they charge each student, we make sure that we stood on our toes. We said, no student will pay this. But I can tell you that it was reduced to 60,000 naira. We're forced. Like me, the day we were suspended from school, they told us not to come close to the campus 5 kilometers close to the campus, anywhere we are seeing close to campus, we should be arrested. So we were advocating outside the campus. And the painful part of this thing is, you will see that in an academic setting, learning, all this should be taught, advancing the nation, progress to the nation. And in that same setting, sometimes you see that a kind of oppression is being done to young leaders.
Now, thank you for bringing up the issue. But unfortunately, most of these protests didn't last for 30 minutes, 1 hour, or for 24 hours. And let me just say 24 hours. Because they were either tear gassed or they were sent home with threat. They were threatened and they were dispersed.
As a student or a youth, you must understand that protests are done within your territories.
Some of these protests were done in the school environment.
Now, let me say this to you. Third day of the protest, on some students, so several students were shot. So now these things, you must expect these things from the kind of authorities we have. That was why I told you here that if you're seeking your opposition, because you're speaking against someone, you're speaking for your right. Now, for the recent things you've seen, it's not a new thing. From time when you look at history, that oppression must be there, but then rest, no matter what it is.
But do you think that spirit is still living at this moment? Because what people consider is, if I go out for protest, if I join this protest, I might be killed, I might be imprisoned, and I'm not ready to leave that.
Now, to checkmate the activities of the management, to fight for the rights, the welfare of the total students on campus. Now, the university community itself, it is called a community because or a military man to arrest a student, you have to go through the protocol of the campus, which meeting the school security. We had an issue that military men came to pick someone in permanent site where the student
moved from the walls of the university to society. Now, Nigeria as a society. Now, who becomes, let's say, who becomes the leader who would lead this protest? And when something goes wrong, when it goes sour, this when you are not student. How about the market women, the market men, the fathers, the sons, the daughters on the streets, people who have not even eaten, who came out for protest, and then they are being opposed and their lives are being threatened?
Now,
what do you think would happen?
You see, in every given community, that's what we call leadership. The market women have their leaders. It is the right of the leaders to educate their people to know their rights. First of all, it's an ethics in this nation or anywhere you go. When someone is protesting, holding his national flag, as a military man, a police, you cannot open fire on that person. You cannot beat the person.
Okay. In fact, that puts you more in danger when you tell a uniformed person, I know my rights. What then do you do in situations like this? Because we're in a country where rights are not being respected. They don't care if you know. In fact, they know the rights more than you do. Some do not know, of course, that you know. But the moment you mention, I know my rights, you have angered the man in uniform or the woman in uniform. In fact, that will make them to even harass you more because you are now telling them that you know your rights and they shouldn't harass you. So we have numerous imprisonment. I know my right has led people to be shot at the point where they were being harassed. So now, do you think people would want to continue on that path of saying, I know my right?
Now you see people, something will be done. Now, there is a need for civil society organizations and people who are aware about these rights to educate the people more. Now, let me tell you something. What citizens don't know. If you're a policeman, you have a name tag. You understand what I'm saying? You have a name tag. Each policeman has a name tag, or military people. Now, if you abuse me, you're beating me, my interest is to get your code number on that uniform. My interest is to get your number. Now, if I have, that's where the judiciary comes out. They must be available to the people. Sometimes people who have taken these issues of oppression, the issues of abuse by authorities, to the relevant court. And let me tell you, when you get that number, you have to court. They go to court even without the military.
Of course, it was your word against the man in uniform. But we thank social media now where whatever you're doing, it is important. Another thing is you have to smartly do it, except somebody does it for you. I've seen a lot of cases where a particular man was, he else took the video and brought it on Twitter. It wasn't even a man that was abused that actually brought this issue on Twitter. Now somebody else brought it on Twitter and tagged the PRO of the police. And this was how the case was traced.
Protests. There are various forms you can do this. Even through social media, you can see an issue of injustice. You can take it on your phone, tag the relevant authorities, tag the police.
Ever abuse that is being meted out on a citizen, that's how you can be helped. Now we have a few minutes to wrap up for the day. Quickly we'll jump into our Maiden National Conference by the International Organization at Crispan Suites and Event Center by 10 a.m. Okay, let's quickly talk about that. Now, can you quickly share with us the inspiration behind organizing this Maiden National Conference? Let's talk about it. And what is the
transformational leadership. Now, what inspired the conference is the nature of leadership in Nigeria and the nature at which ills are happening in the nations. So this inspired the organization to have this conference, and we are calling on all civil society organizations. We have sent, I can tell you that on that day, 2nd of December, at student groups, and we have reached out to a lot. And what we're trying to do is to open our eyes to the role we need to play. Like I told you that if the people are well informed in the grassroots, and all these things, is by dealing with the root causes of the problems in Nigeria.
Okay.
I can tell you this, that you have a lot of civil society organizations taking humanitarian. I can tell you that since there are people that have stayed in IDP camp for more than 7 years, more than 10 years, yet every time relief materials are given to them. What we need to do is to deal with the root cause. What is the root cause? Where have we gone wrong? And what needs to be done? It's not all about ranting, speaking, and saying things are bad, but also looking at the solutions. His Lordship, Bishop Benjamin Kwashi, as the host to the conference. And we also have Hajia Kajija Abdullahi Iya. Maiden Conference is a child of necessity.
Okay.
Because we have seen the electoral process or processes in Nigeria failed the citizens to the extent that many are even. The citizens have a lot of roles to play. And not just the citizens, but the civil society organizations need to focus on the transformation of this nation in the leadership. 2nd of December at Crispan.
That's next week Saturday.
Yes, next week Saturday.
Okay, thank you so much for being here, Mr. Samode. We've had a wonderful conversation on ethical protest and advancing social causes, and also to remind transformational leadership and social justice. You may sit, you may hear this and say it is not your concern. It is all of our concern, whether you are a citizen, whether you're a worker. If you are chanced, and you can be there on Saturday on us, from our families to the group of friends to groups in churches, we are all leaders. So please be there on Saturday. Ethical Spotlight will come your way again next week, Friday.